Hey everyone, Joe here. In this episode, I got to sit down with Thlaythla Thunder Meak, an Air Force senior enlisted leader and an entrepreneur. During our discussion, Thunder shared his amazing and inspirational story of being born in a Vietnamese work camp, his family's extraordinary escape, and how the values and lessons he has gained along the way have molded who he is today. We really enjoyed this one and hope you do too.
Life, learning, leadership, the Llama Lounge.
Yo, welcome back to the Llama Lounge, a dialogue on all things life, learning, and leadership. This is Joe, and I have with me a very special guest with me today, Thlaythla Thunder Meak. What's up, bro? How you doing?
That's actually a perfect pronunciation of my name. Doing awesome.
I've been practicing, man. I didn't want to jack it up, but the rest of this, I'm going to be calling you Thunder because there's no way I won't mess it up at some point. But yeah, for all of our listeners, Thunder is the Prime Base Engineer Emergency Force, or what we call Prime Beef Manager, and currently filling the Readiness and Emergency Management Flight Superintendent role here at Travis Air Force Base, California. Is amazing senior NCO, senior non-commissioned officer that I get to work with very often, and he is also an entrepreneur working on a business entitled Meak Prince, which we'll talk about in a moment. Yeah, man. So you got a lot of stuff going on. So how are you balancing all that?
Well, I tell you, it takes a lot of time management and waking up very, very early. And sometimes you feel like you don't do enough, but even though you've done so much, because your schedule just kind of overlaps each other. So when you do something, it kind of accomplishes another task anyway, but you didn't even realize it. So I've been time managing my time and my life very, very good, which is outstanding, right? All the stuff you learn when you were in ALS and NCOA and Senior NCO Academy, time management is key, utilizing your resources properly, and I'm using every single bit of it. So.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, it's funny, like what you just talked about. When we go through our professional military education at the various steps, a lot of times we take for granted what we're learning and how valuable it is. But I remember first time outside of Airman Leadership School, or ALS, I thought the way we write, or the way we write speeches and all that stuff with transitions and intro and purpose, and all that stuff, I was like, man, this is lame. Nobody actually writes like this. But when you actually transfer that into college papers, or later on, like we do on our blog site, writing articles, it absolutely helps someone flow and understand, where the discussion's going, or what topics you're going to be bouncing back and forth from. So yeah, a lot of great stuff there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, hey, for the listeners, so I've been the superintendent of the Civil Engineer Squadron here since January. We're recording this at the end of May, so I've got to work with Thunder for just over 5 months or so. Most of it's been during this COVID operation, so it's been very interesting. But one thing that I really like to do is spend some time with each of my senior NCOs to discuss, I want to know about their story. And I will tell you, Thunder's kind of just blew my mind. I mean, we have amazing stories across our entire Air Force, but his is very unique. And I would love, Thunder, if you could share with the audience, with our listeners, your life, like how it was when you were growing up, actually, even from the point where you were born, because I thought that was fascinating. So I'd love for you to kind of share some of that with us.
Absolutely. So it's not often that I get to share my story. You can say my childhood story. It really takes a circumstance and a true sit down face to face to get down to that kind of level. And for me to share that kind of story with somebody like Chief Bogdan is a deeper connection that I was seeking. And that's why I shared the story of my childhood. And I tell you, it's where you came from that kind of established your values, your beliefs, and how you are as an individual. Growing up, there's other things that influence your life that may kind of lead you to a different direction. But the core true value of who you are deep down is established young from your childhood. And I I was born in a refugee camp in Vietnam. My family uh, escaped from the labor camp during the Khmer Rouge genocide. And not to go into too much detail, but overnight, my father, my uncle, and another family, and grandma, grandpa, and all the kids, we basically just uprooted, ran um, into the jungle and hid. They were chased, like with dogs and everything, right? For 2 weeks, they survived in the jungle and finally made it to the border of Vietnam and Cambodia and crossed the border. And of course, during that time, the Vietnam War was also going on. So they put all the immigrants or the refugee into camps. And in these camps is can imagine mud soil. Behind would be like sugar cane or just jungle everywhere, right? And they were living in mud huts, literally mud huts. There's no concrete, there's no permanent structure. They make their own. And whatever on top they can find could be leaves, could be rags, could be random things they found laying around, could be used as roof. And I actually have a picture of that. Only one picture I found, and I would love to share a picture with Chief Bogdan sometime. So you can see, yeah, no kidding. That's Meak right there.
Right.
I was maybe 2 at that time, or maybe 1. I was a little chubby kid, but yeah, life growing up, you wouldn't know. A lot of you guys listening probably like, oh yeah, can make a connection here. What I'm about to say is that if you grow up in a situation like straight up like in mud hut and the river that's flowing in front of your house, it floods often, but it ended up being the best place for a kid to play. You wouldn't realize that's a dangerous location. It's a fun location like a playground. But looking back at it now, I'm like, dang, that was dangerous. What was fun for us was like if we could have floated away and drowned and died. Anyway, so growing up in poverty, straight up poverty, you're talking about living off $20 back then for a month. My family survived on $20 for a month.
Let me
Translate.
ask, so real quick, how long was your family in that camp before you were born?
I think about 1 year. Both my sisters were already born. They were still young. They ended up being the one to babysit me. Really, a lot of stories I've heard with my sisters taking care of me. So the picture that was taken, I believe it was the second move. We were shuffled from camp to camp as more refugee came across the border. But it's same situation. We were not wanted. There were a lot of conflict between the Vietnamese citizens and us because we were provided some resources like water and some goods, while the citizen of Vietnam did not. So I remember one story where my dad and a lot of the other grown-up men end up having bamboo stick fights, like straight up smashing each other's face in with bamboo sticks in order to protect what was given to them from the Vietnamese citizens. So yeah, I think we were a year after we went to camp. So.
So do you remember a lot from when you guys were running away? Like what are your memories from that?
So those are imaginative memory.
Yeah.
So you can imagine at night and whenever we get together, did dinner, right? All the old folks would reminisce on the stories they went through because they want to pass on the experience to the youngins so they remember this is actually what happened to us and we are here now. A little bit more safe, a little bit more with a roof on top of our heads and not being chased and shot at and sliced at, whatever. So my imagination is what is my core memory right now based on what I was told. But perfect, perfect, I guess a picture. Actually, it's not a picture. It's my dad in one of these conversations at night, he actually rolled up his pants. He showed me his shin. I'm like, why are you rolling up your pants and showing me shin? So part of the story was how during that 2 week in the jungle, they have to cut wood and survive, to make fire, make charcoal and stuff like that. Anyway, he accidentally slipped the axe right into his shin and chopped his this a huge scar.
Ooh.
It's all blacked out. I'm like, wow, you didn't go through the whole leg. It's one of those stories where like, oh, it's proof, it's evidence. It's right there. He got, a big old axe scar on his shin. It's all blacked out. And why it's blacked out? It's kind of funny. I'll share with you guys. So back then, there's no medicine we had anything like that. So it's ask somebody to pee on it, kind of thing. And any ash that you have laying around, you shove that ash right into that wound, and that would help cauterize it and stop the blood from coming out. So when it heals up, of course, all that ash and all that nasty stuff that's in there cause that to turn black. So it's a black scar.
Wow.
Yeah, so I remember that pretty clearly because we were sitting there and he rolled his pants. I'm like, hey, that's evidence.
Hey man, that is hardcore. And for our listeners out there, I highly do not recommend if you have an injury to do what Thunder's dad did, because that is you got to be a different type of man to go through that. I'm telling you.
That's so we actually did it again when I was, I think it was maybe 5. I accidentally sliced the top of my finger off and it was just dangling there. My grandfather was like, oh, hold on a second. Guess what? So I asked my little brother to pee on it. I'm like, what? So peed on the open wound with my top of the finger dangling there is right here. And he grabbed it and put some of his ash from his cigarette right in the middle of it, put it together and wrapped it up. I mean, that was the pain. It was so painful. Anyway, it reattached. It reattached without any stitching, without anything like that. So it worked, I tell you.
That's some shaman stuff right there. That's amazing. So you were in the jungle for 2 weeks, and so what was next then? How did you get from there to where you're at today? How did you get to the States and all that?
That's an awesome question. So during the bombing between the border of Vietnam and Cambodia, it was supposed to bomb Vietnam, right? But they ended up bombing the side of Cambodia. And then all the I guess the revolution started. The American evac out of the embassy, and during that evac and after that evac, they also helped evacuate 50,000 Cambodians into the States as immigrants. And part of that 50,000 group, it's actually PDG, by the way. Part of that 50,000 were some of my aunts and uncles who they were still like about my age, 20s and so on. And then of course the rest of the families, get left behind. So for the youngest that came to the States, they grew up going to school, got married, got a house, everything like that. And lo and behold, how we got connected was, I believe it was either Red Cross or Greenpeace, one of those organizations that goes around to all these refugee camps and they help with, aid like clothing and medicine. Well, my dad at the time, he spoke French. So he was able to communicate and they took down our names when those Greenpeace or Red Cross individuals came back to the States. They looked up the names, the records, right? They found, hey, these are your relatives, right? From here. And lo and behold, I don't know how long it was, maybe 6 months after, maybe a year after, they came back. And that's when they kind of gave us the news, like, hey, I think we found your significant others here in the state, in Minnesota, Minneapolis, St. Paul. And that's how it started, with the letters going back and forth. And they found out that, hey, my dad's family, grandma, grandpa, and the 2 uncles and aunts were still alive in refugee camps.
Wow.
So that's when the money started flowing. They sent about $20 a month, and that's what we used back then. And of course, the immigration paperwork started. So we came into the United States as immigrants.
Wow. So how old were you at that point?
By that time, I believe I was 9. and we came to the States in '91, dead middle of winter in Minneapolis, St. Paul.
So that, yeah, that's a little bit of a different climate change, right,
Yeah,
man?
sure.
I can imagine. So, hey, you talked about your father was speaking French, right? So what I remember you told me that you speak multiple languages as well.
Correct.
Yeah,
So I
what languages are those?
I speak Vietnamese and Khmer. But of
Mm,
course, I've been away from speaking on a daily basis.
mhm,
So the tongue, I guess, kind of lose some of its flex. I understand when I listen to conversation, but for me
mhm.
to converse properly with an adult, I would say it'd be like a sixth grade level kind of conversation.
Mm.
Yeah,
Oh, well, that's not too bad. I think most of us still operate at eighth grade level when we're communicating, right? I mean, I think that's what they say anyway. So it's not too bad. But so I just wanted to unpack that a little bit. So if you know multiple languages, and um, how does that? What's your perspective when you're receiving information? So I've heard multiple people say it's like basically you're receiving it in the language that might be your initial and the first one you learned, and then you have to kind of translate it in your brain to kind of like understand it and then respond to it. Is that something that you can kind of relate to?
definitely, definitely. So when I hear you ask a question, of course, it comes through as English. And it's like having three processors, right? For Vietnamese, Khmer, and English. Primary processor being English, and then it branches out to the other two processors, right? I'm like, hey, what does this meaning really, deeply mean? And then all three would compile a response and shoot it back to my mouth, kind of thing, Sometimes the really thick accent comes out. Sometimes I put, adverbs and verbs in the wrong position because other languages, it's paraphrased differently. The verb goes
Right.
a lot. So it is a challenge to converse publicly. But if you notice, I think I'm doing okay talking to you right
Hmm.
now. And
Yeah.
it takes a lot of practice and a lot of failure. Right? Too many. But it's okay.
Right. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to kind of unpack that because I think most people don't relate to that. Especially us as Americans. I mean, I was born in Korea, but pretty much the language that I grew up with was English because I moved to the States when I was so young. And um, I think something that I learned when I've been traveling to all these other countries is it's a deep sense of humility for me because I went to a restaurant, I think maybe in Barcelona one time, and this lady came over and spoke to me in English, went back to another person and spoke to them in Spanish, and then went someplace else and spoke to somebody in French. And I mean, to be able to master three languages like that and probably wasn't getting paid very much, because she was a waitress. And I just think that a lot of us kind of take that for granted.
True, true, true. It's like
Yeah.
having
Yeah.
three dictionaries in your head. No, one thing I go around saying, how much do you really know versus how much I know? And other people would say, I know way more than you do, man. Trust me. I'm like, okay, well, I know three languages. You have one dictionary, I have three dictionary, and all those
Yeah.
dictionaries add up would be three times more knowledge than you would have, right? So like that, and like, oh, true, yeah, true.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely an interesting perspective on that, man. So hey, so you got to the States, right? I know we kind of went somewhere with that one. I just kind of wanted to make sure that everybody understood, but you got to the States, and then kind of what happened then? Because you had siblings, and all of you are kind of growing up in freezing Minnesota, right? So kind of if you could walk through what happened from there to when you joined the Air Force.
Absolutely. So Minneapolis, St. Paul, beautiful place. Well, it still is. And I
Mhm.
remember, walking outside. I'm like, wow, this is amazing. Everything was brand new, brand new. Right? It's one of those things where you go and visit a location that you never been to before, and it's just fantastic. There was so many mouths to feed. We were in line almost every single day at the food pantry, food distribution. All the kids were in line, and
Mhm.
then if you're online, you're gonna get some sort of a bag. and we would bring all that home, and then we would divvy all that out between all the family members and make what we could. So, to save money, we went fishing too, almost every single day. So in my background now, I mean, if you see the video on the chat now, you see I got a bunch of fishing poles, and it's a lifelong. What I'm trying to get at is I've got into fishing because of that. It actually, we were surviving for a good year on fish. We go fishing every day. We catch anything and everything. We go to the park, we go to the rivers, the lakes. And Minneapolis, St. Paul was the state of 10,000 lakes or something like that. The motto was. And I got into fishing. So that was our main source of protein, even for the sponsor family, which is our aunts and uncles. There's no way for them to go grocery shopping, right? So in between the chicken and the beef and the pork, the majority of it, 80%, I would say, was the fish. So from there, my mom and dad decided to move to Massachusetts, where we found our other side of the family, my mom's side of the family. They're there, and there's a whole huge community in Lowell, Massachusetts, Asian community, and they had a house, and they were willing to let us stay. So we stayed in their house for about 2 years, and after that, my mom and dad said, everybody's growing up so fast, we need our own room, own space. So finally, they found an apartment right next to the library in City Hall on the 6th floor. Yeah, I think it was the 6th floor. And it was 2 bedrooms. So imagine 2 bedrooms for 5 people.
Wow.
So it's for 7 people, including mom and dad. So we just laid where we could, and we shared what we could, but it's very cramped quarters. And my mom and dad, they were very strict on education. They wanted us to succeed. This is why we got to the United States, right? Is for the kids to succeed. So they did not allow us to go to public school. They strictly believed that going to a private school would allow you a more one-on-one kind of scenario and grow up, I guess, in a straighter path. Lowell, Massachusetts, back then, when I was going through high school, were gang infested. One group would fight with another group, the Asian with the Mexicans, with the French and the Italians. They have their own little zones. A lot of you may be like, oh yeah, I know exactly what Meak is talking about right now. It happened to our city too. Anyway, to the point where some of my schoolmates, after graduation of grade school, 8th grade, they got shot, they got stabbed. One did not make it, stuff like that. So growing up in that kind of environment, my mom and dad said, go to public school. I'm sorry, go to private school. They were willing to work 2 jobs each of them, and to pay for all that. For all the kids, actually, all 5 kids went to private school.
Wow.
So the majority of them went to rent, food, and school. That was it. I rarely saw my mom at home. If they were home, they would only there to sleep, and they were gone again. So the kids were managing out their own lives. Lo and behold, after high school, I was working with my dad as a designer for a print company. This is where I learned a lot of my designing skills that allowed me to be the creative individual I am now. And I mean, after 2 years working, I got maybe a $2 raise, and I was cranking out a lot of products, So imagine a designer for a brand, huge business. Their design work actually comes to my table as the final reviewer. And I would scrutinize every single pixel in their design and say, nope, that's not going to work. You got to fix that, and shoot it back to them, like deny their work before it actually goes to production. That's my role, but I was getting paid like nothing. Anyway, so I talked to my dad and seeing how he progressed in life. And I didn't want that kind of life. I wanted more excitement. I wanted better money, I guess. At the time, I was in a relationship too. I needed to support. I was paying my way to college as well. And so talked to dad, and I was like, you know what? It's a good opportunity to join an organization that will allow you to grow, allow you to succeed, learn and travel. And so it's so many benefits. And one of my cousins joined a couple of years before, and he kind of sold us on it as well. Like how we're supposed to be as recruiter, right? As we grow up. as a recruiter mentality. So I finally joined in 2004 after 4 years of work. I graduated in 2000. I joined in 2004. So I spent 4 years, doing startup business, um, working with my dad, going to college, relationship. All that happened in that 4 year. So joined the military in 2004 for a better life, a better opportunity, travel. Kind of sad that I left my mom and dad, but it
Yeah.
was necessary. So
Yeah. That's amazing. And to think, because your siblings are also doing something, I remember you were telling me they're pretty successful in what they're doing too, right?
correct. So my brother, he's also in the military. He is now the FSS soup, I think.
Hmm.
So at the I forget what base. It's just slipped my mind. My sister she went to the nursing program from enlisted to nursing program. She got accepted. Now she's a butter bar at Nellis, Nellis Air Force Base.
Wow. Yeah, that's pretty amazing. Because I just want to take this full circle real quick for our listeners. I mean, you were living in a mud hut, right? And then all the sacrifices that your family made and everything else to get you over here, and then you worked very hard, and you're all very successful in the military. Uh, and the trajectory just continues to go up, and I think that's just an amazing story, and that's why I really wanted you to share that with our folks, because a lot of people, they might be going through worse things. They might be going through not as bad things, but it's good when we can kind of hear someone else's story and get some perspective on things. I think it's always value added, you know.
Definitely.
So,
People forget where they came from. And for us, we came from nothing, literally nothing, right? And now,
right.
I mean, senior master select in the world greatest military force,
Hmm.
bachelor degree, 2 associates, and seem to be doing very, very well. And I tell you, it's not because I'm any different than anybody else, is because I realized that I came from nothing, and the only
Hmm.
way, the only different is it's always going to be up, 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 up. I've already hit my bottom. So for those who don't know what the bottom is, I mean, it's the worst case scenario you can be at, and from there it just gets better. So
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's funny because one of the things that I've always got from you since I've known you is a lot of work ethic, which I can see where that's coming from. Some of the values that you talked about, strong work ethic and strong attention to detail, which kind of makes more sense now because when you're looking at every pixel, when you're looking at designs, I can see where that's coming from too, because the products that I typically get from you always are, there's nothing really wrong with them. They're always something I could just push forward on. So I really appreciate that. And because for those that don't know, when you're working in a position like I'm at, if you have to correct a lot of things that you get as products, it just drags everything down. You're not able to do the leadership things that you really feel like you should be doing. You're not able to maximize your discretionary time to lead and develop your folks. And so guys like Thunder, when they send me products or whatever else it might be, they're always on time and they're always perfect. And I think a lot of that comes from how he grew up. So kudos to you, man. And hey, so just transition from kind of your story, then you're in the military, right? And I mean, not transition from your story, but now you're in the military, and you came in one career field, and then you kind of stepped out a couple times to do some stuff. Can you tell people a little bit about that?
of course, absolutely. So in 2010, I was selected to be the schoolhouse instructor, tech
Hmm.
school instructor, and that was definitely out of my comfort zone for sure. So throw your best troop out of the comfort zone, and they may grow. I would not say will grow, because it really depends on what the appetite is. If they don't want it in the first place, you're not willing, inclined, capable of doing it. I was not capable of doing it, but I was inclined, very nervous, and went to Shepherd Air Force Base. And the first year was the hardest time in, I would say, my military career so far. I'm an introvert for sure, and with three processors running in my head, or different languages I have to process. Imagine me standing in front of a class lecturing is very difficult. Because at the time I was very self-conscious, and that didn't really help out at all. It took a year for me to get really comfortable. And like, I can do this. I don't really care what my face looks like, as long as I'm able to articulate the objective and make sure that these newbies understand what they're responsible for. I think I'm good. I think I'm good. So with that understanding of my shortcomings, mistakes I may make, if I catch it, I'll fix it. If I don't, I'll ask for feedback and go from there. That was a challenge. But anyway, I was successful at it. Now, those 4 years of teaching allowed me to be more alive in conversation, in public conversations, able to converse a little bit better. You can hear me now, still a little, stuttering a little bit, still pausing a little bit. I'm pausing because I got 3 processes running, guys. Kind of like think of a good sentence, a phrase to put to my mouth, I guess. And after that, of course, is the gig I'm in now is the prime beef manager, and dual hat as the emergency management super. Definitely an eye opener for those who have not been a part of this side of the house in CE. I say it's 50% of the fight. We were taught that our war mission, sustainment, contingency, sustainment, AF cycles, and everything else is the primary mission, and base sustainment, continuity, and everything else is a secondary mission. So being able to work in the primary mission, it allowed me to network to the level that, I mean, I'm calling directly to AMC FAMs for an answer, and they respond back like I'm an important person. That's how in depth, I guess, or the reach that you are able to get. And what I say, what I do is backed by the commander. So it's a self-run office where we manage our own folks. We have our own schedule. We work on our own agenda, but the overall result meets the commander's intent, the unit's intent, right? And the group and the wing, all the way up to AMC and the enterprise-wide. It flows just like that. So I tell you, it takes a lot of work to get somebody out the door to meet an AAF rotation. So imagine an office of 4 people running everything, every aspect, training, manning, resource, budget, reaching out to other organizations and coordinating with them. It's like an entire 50% of the unit with 4 people in the office. That's the size of my office right now. And it allowed me to grow as an individual. Definitely,
yeah,
for sure.
and for those in the audience that aren't really familiar with how the civil engineer squadron is broken down, in our prime beef office, he's basically in the work center that's responsible for all the contingency type training and the unit deployment managers. It's all of that in a work center, which is very different from your original AFSC, your normal career field, right? Thunder, explain what your normal career field is and what you transitioned from.
So I came in as a plumber, and we merged water fuel with fuel. So now we are water and fuel. We deal with all the water product and the energy product for the planes and stuff to fly.
Yeah. So a sea change. So he goes from coming in specifically as a utilities guy doing plumbing, and then the Air Force, big CE, decided that we were going to merge 2 career fields. Even though we've always heard water and oil don't mix, we decided that they were going to, and they became 1 career field. So he had to learn about the fuel system side of things, and then he also becomes an instructor of this stuff. Right. And then he moves on and he becomes a deployment manager type superintendent, Reggie's contingency, everything. Right. So a lot of growth that occurred there. And I think the big thing that I always like to push out to folks is without stepping out of that comfort zone like he did on multiple occasions, you're not going to grow, right? If you just constantly stay in it. And I think you can attest to it. You've learned tons of things throughout your transitions, haven't you?
Correct. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, well, what kind of things do you think? Because you kind of talked about some of the skills you learned coming over to be an instructor. What are some of the things that you kind of learned that you could kind of translate into general skills that maybe even a civilian audience member might understand when you transitioned over to being the prime beef manager?
So uh, for sure is the ability, which I'm still using now to this day, the
Mm-hmm.
ability to formulate a plan or a strategy from scratch, from start to end. What does it take to start a plan? Who is involved? Dive right in, get the connections, and then monitor throughout the whole process, fine tune it, knowing the group dynamics, knowing what the resources you have and how to use them properly. You know, someone is really innovative versus someone that's really introvert but still have a different kind of skill, the team dynamics, how to navigate that water and put them in the right position so that they work together good and give you a better
Mm-hmm.
product. So being an instructor, it allows me to observe the students and who they are and put them in teams, practice back then, right? To make the end result, the product that they give me better. I kind of transition that. I use that still as when I was a superintendent. Who are my NCYCs? What skills do they have? Are they really knowledgeable, or are they really talkative and able to be in front of public? So the person that's really good at talking but still be able to give me good data, I prefer that individual versus somebody that's just straight up doing paperwork and doing the books right but not being able to converse properly, because this person can be the back behind the scene, supplies the stats and knowledge and research to the other guy who can converse a little bit better. So understanding where the plug and play is and the outcome from that could be so translate that to the civilian sector for those. Like, hey, how does this connect to the civilian sector? A lot of companies, a lot of businesses rely on effective training program and effective managers being able to manage the resources, right? Talking about people resources and understanding the human dynamics, the emotional intelligence of it, and that will trigger other productivity. If you're able to treat people right, use them correctly, they feel like they use correctly, the time's not wasted on the iPhone, on the computer surfing and wasting time and companies money. They value that. A lot of people value that, and you end up getting more productivity by just understanding who they are as a person. So translating one skill to another seat in the units. I mean, I'm using those skills constantly. So some people, why do you prefer this individual all the time? Well, this individual produces all the time. So why wouldn't I use them? Unless they say to me, you know what, Meak, you're using me too much. I'm kind of overwhelmed. I haven't heard that yet. All I've heard is like, keep it coming, son, Meak.
Yeah.
I got this for you. I'm like, hey, you got me, I got you. Let's go. So
that's awesome. Yeah, and I think this is a great segue into what we're going to talk about next, is because you talk about planning, and I just heard recently from a guy I was talking to as an entrepreneur, and he's prior service, and he said, everybody gets kind of freaked out about a business plan, but he said, if you're in the military and you understand how an operational plan works, it's the same thing. It transitions straight to how you'd want to develop your business plan. So it's pretty cool. So any of our military audience out there that's interested in being an entrepreneur and kind of understand, you definitely want to kind of have the grasp of how we do planning. And I know not everybody gets involved in that, but great tool, get great skill set to learn and at least start reading them, right? But transitioning to that business piece, Meak prints, right? And that's the business you're working on. I'd love for you to. So recently, you shared a very vulnerable video of yourself talking about all of the struggles and trials and tribulations that go with a startup business like you're working on. So can you tell us a little bit about Meak Prints, what you do, and maybe tell us a little bit about what you're learning in the process?
Absolutely. So great segue, right? So Meak Prints was meant to be a passive income. So this business will run itself when it's set up, which is fully set up right now, and I'm barely managing it, right? It's just a model startup business that a lot of people want to use. you don't want to manage your business every single day because I have a dedicated job, the military, right? I'm nowhere
Right.
close to retirement yet. I have work, I have other commitments, and I love fishing. Anyway, so passive income. The more passive income streams you have, the more set up you will be. So this business, Meak Prints, if you go to right now, is meakprints.shop, and Meak is MEAK, and prints.shop. You'll see that these products and items on there have very generic quotes and graphics on them. These are templates, and these may change over time as I update my catalog, right? And people would just go and buy these things. Eventually, this site will allow customers to customize their own product. So the target audience is everybody that's into trendy, niche, viral things like what's going on with the world right now, Roni, coronavirus.
Yeah.
And it is really meant to be a passive income. The trial and tribulation that comes with creating a business like that is what I'm sharing on my YouTube channel, which is also brand new. And to be honest, a business startup like myself will not survive if I'm not straightforward and transparent about what I'm doing, even at a small scale as it is now, because I'm planning to grow this business to be, hopefully a multi-million-dollar business later. There are other plans to branch it out, to grow it, to expand it, on Facebook and Google, and so sell other items besides just clothes and mugs and everything else. But what I'm sharing on Facebook is my daily struggles with this business that a lot of people, my subordinates, previous subordinates, like, hey, yeah, I did that too, and I failed. And you're doing it too, so Meak, but you failed. But I tell you, I fail. I don't stop there. I try to find a solution and keep on going. So that's what I'm sharing through my YouTube channels is, you know what? When you hit this wall really hard, this is the way out right here. And it may work for individuals. It may not. People just give up. But that's how I try to engage. So this is another revenue stream is YouTube, right? Affiliate program and so on and so forth. But all the YouTube influence out there, I'm not an influence by any chance. I like to be a coach, a how-to coach. And you got to start somewhere. So on my first video, Chief, you remember? I mean, I told people, hey, dude, I did my first video ever. I was using my 3-year-old phone to record myself sitting in my living room. And lo and behold, the phone just cut out after 5 minutes because the dang thing ran out of storage space. So you got to start somewhere. And if you follow and tune back, you see that progress, which will emerge, and content will be more detailed because instead of 5 minutes, I can 8 minutes, 10 minutes. I'm an open book, guys and gals. Any questions you have, just put in the comments, and I'm able to answer it for you honestly. And then as I go,
that's awesome.
Share with you guys as well.
Yep. Yeah. And that's awesome. When I saw that video, I was like, what is Thunder doing? Right. So I just see this link. So I click on it and then I just can't stop watching it because you're like just putting it all out there on the difficulties that you're running into and some of the things that, maybe somebody wants to be an entrepreneur. They want to start a business, but they don't even consider some stuff. So what I thought was really cool about it was you were sharing stuff that most of us probably don't know and that we would run into, and you kind of ran into it. You ran into some of those walls and you're sharing it so that, not everybody else will run into the same issues. But the other cool thing about when you posted that video was kind of serendipitous is I had just talked to the guys from Bunker Labs who I'm going to have on the podcast soon. And we were talking about how they're helping veterans with their businesses. So we got to schedule a meeting with you and James. And I think that's going to be a really cool thing. Hopefully you get some help there too.
Absolutely. And that meeting is scheduled for tomorrow. And I'm looking forward to it, James. So.
Yeah, he's an amazing guy too. I had a long talk with him, and immediately, like when I saw your video, so I think a lot of times timing things happen for a reason. I saw that video and I realized that would be a good connection. So it's great, and man, you shared a lot about your story, shared a lot about how you've grown, some of the failures you've gone through, and your aspirations for this business. And I just want to really thank you for taking the time to do this, because it's not easy to put yourself out there. And especially like you had mentioned, you got 3 processors going through your brain. So you're really, letting yourself be a little bit vulnerable here. So I just can't be more grateful for you taking the time and you sharing.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for having me on here.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, what we like to do is try to wrap these up with what we call leadership rapid fire. So I'm going to ask you a couple questions. You're going to let them go process through your 3 processors. All right. And then you're going to give me an answer on these. Okay. Ready? All right. All right. Question number 1. What is your favorite leadership trait?
Transparency. I'm not sure that's my trait anyway.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. Cool. Transparency. All right. What is your favorite quote?
Live free or die. That's the first thing that came to my mind. New Hampshire's license plate. Live free or die.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I was like, yeah, that's in New Hampshire, right? I saw that in Ronnie Chang's stand-up comedy, which was hilarious. Awesome. Yeah, he was talking about how like the mottos become more passive and chill when you go further to the West Coast. On the East Coast, you got to live free or die.
Cool.
Yeah. So cool. Oh, okay. What is the number 1 book that you might recommend to somebody that's an aspiring leader or maybe even aspiring entrepreneur?
So this book is literally about 100 pages long. It's very easy to read. It did take me like 2 months to read it, but it's Rich Dad, Poor Dad. So it goes through a life cycle of a young kid all the way to, where he is now as a multi-million-dollar entrepreneur investing in real estate. And it really hits home on the little things. So Rich Dad.
That's awesome. Cool. And we're going to make sure we go ahead and put that in the show notes for everybody. Very popular book. And a final question is, how do you find harmony between life, learning, and leadership?
I say the connections that you make, like what, like you and me. The connections allow you to grow and develop, deeper emotions, and understanding where other people are coming from helps you understand what you are capable of being or changing to be. Maybe they get some value from you, just like how all the questions you asked me today about my childhood experiences that may have triggered some other experience that you may not realize, and that lo and behold will challenge you in a different way. Now it's like, what's up? Meak can do all that, and he's crazy as he is, and he's all successful. I could beat him anytime, so bring it on. Do it.
That's awesome. Yeah. That's exactly the way. I think that's great. That's a great attitude to have. I remember a dude told me one time, he was standing outside. He was a A1C. And I was walking to my office, and I guess he had been in my office earlier working on the HVAC unit in there. And I was walking in, and he said, "Hey, sir." And I was like, "What's up?" And he was like, "Hey, I just want to let you know that my goal is to be better than you." And, I didn't even know this guy, right? And I was like, man, that's bold, and I appreciate that. Let me know how I can help you be better than me, man. I want you to be better than me. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Be a better version of me anytime. Do it,
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. Appreciate it. Cool, man. So Meak Prints, real quick, before we fully wrap up, is we can find it on the website, which is you have a website and also Facebook. What are those?
You just search up meakprints.shop. This is MEAKSHOP.shop. This is a small streaming YouTube channel right now. You look that up. I got a Facebook page as well for the business that I'm constantly putting up ads for. But I'm trying to make a vet-owned business group in Meak Prints. This is where I'm going to share other things that maybe the YouTube channel have missed, and expands on some other, struggles or successes. So.
Good stuff. Awesome, man. And I'll make sure we get some of those links into the show notes as well. Once again, really appreciate you sharing your time, sharing your story. And I'm positive somebody listened to this, got something out of it. So thank you again.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
All right. All right. To our listeners, man, as we always say, be safe, stay healthy, and llamas are out. Take care.
Thanks for listening to the show. We'd love for you to connect with us at www.llama-leadership.com and on Facebook at facebook.com/Llama Leadership and also on Instagram at Llama Leaders. And a big thanks to Mike Whitmer for the music. To check out more of his stuff, go to soundcloud.com/Mike-Whitmer. Thanks again. See you on the next episode.